Welcome to the Q-MindBody podcast. My name is Darren Main, and in this podcast, we talk about all things having to do with gay men's wellness, spirituality, self-inquiry, and just improving our lives in every way imaginable. Now, in the past, I've done episodes about ayahuasca, which is really fun and inspiring, but plant medicine is much bigger than that one aspect of plant medicine. So in this episode, I'm going to be talking to Dr. Eric Russell. He is an expert in plant medicine and using it as a transformational tool. We're going to be talking about how this can be particularly helpful for gay men as we achieve our transformational potential. That's a direct quote, and I'm excited about it. Before we dive into the conversation, though, I want to just alert you to a few things. First, I'm going to put Eric's website in the show notes, along with other resources he mentions, so you can click through and find him easily. I'll also put information about my work as a coach, a yoga teacher, massage therapist, and so on in the show notes. You can join our community on Facebook or just like and follow and share, whether it's on Spotify or YouTube or wherever you're finding this. And both Eric and I will be monitoring the comments. So if you have questions or comments or your own personal experiences, even if you disagree with us, do it nicely. Feel free to drop that in the comments. With that said, I'm going to bring in Dr. Eric Russell to talk about plant medicine. How are you, Eric? It's good to see you.
Darren, nice to see you as well.
I love your work on what I see like on Instagram and elsewhere. I just love your videos and some of the positivity you bring to the work you do. And I want to hear a little bit more about that. I'm Dr. Eric Russell. That sounds very important, or like a character on General Hospital, one of the other. I'm wondering what you're a doctor of and how that feeds into the work that you do.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Or are you on General Hospital?
Exactly. I might be, just saying. So I am actually a doctor of psychology. So I received my PhD in experimental psychology, not actually clinical psychology, but research in psychology. So I went to graduate school for about 5 years to earn that degree. And specifically, I was doing a lot of research involving close relationships between gay and straight individuals. So I did a lot of research back in my graduate days on the close relationship between gay men and straight women, kind of the Will and Grace effect, if you will, and which was a very interesting line of research. But I was very curious and wanted to know more about that relationship, just because growing up, as gay coming out, I felt like I had so many female friend allies in my coming out process and going into high school, college, you name it. And I felt like they were always there for me. And so I really wanted to better understand that relationship dynamic. And so that was like part of essentially my PhD thesis, was investigating the kind of the reasons for that kind of close relationship development between those two diameters.
I see a whole new podcast on this subject in the coming to your inbox, your podcast feed soon.
Yeah.
I just went to see Madonna in concert for her celebration tour, and there was a moment I looked around, and there was all these middle-aged women and middle-aged gay men who we all sort of bonded over Madonna's music, and sort of that empowering women and empowering gay men and supporting each other. So, I'm a fan of both you and Madonna.
Yeah.
Although I have to say,
Madonna.
I have to say, you'd look even better in those cone boobs than she did.
I've worn boobs before. They're kind of heavy.
I want pictures. Well, you have sort of turned your professional focus in recent years to plant medicine. And I'm wondering if you could say just generally what plant medicine is. I think people can glean at least the idea, but maybe if you could define that a little bit, and then we can tease it out a little bit more and why gay men in particular might benefit from considering it.
Yeah, great question. So, plant medicine is essentially a naturally occurring substance that induces altered states of consciousness or healing. So, a plant medicine could be herbal. It could be like something like rose, tulsi, sage, gotu kola. Like these are just common herbs that you could take for any sort of physical, sometimes emotional benefit, sometimes healing. But you can also take entheogens or psychedelic plant medicines. And this is like ranges from like ayahuasca, psilocybin mushrooms, wachuma, or in other words, San Pedro cactus, and then also iboga. And so all of these are just different plant medicines within that kind of entheogen category, which is just psychedelic. And those induce kind of the altered states of consciousness, expanded awareness, and all of that type of stuff.
Well, I did a fair amount of research into plant medicine when I was in high school before I got clean and sober. And I don't know as it was all that therapeutic because I was mostly interested in seeing a lot of pretty colors and listening to the Grateful Dead. And it was fun. It was fantastic in a lot of ways and maybe not so much in others. I think what you're talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, is something deeper and more therapeutic. And I'm wondering if you could just speak to like what is the difference between dropping acid and listening to Pink Floyd and doing something more therapeutically intentional.
Yeah.
And how do you differentiate between those?
I love this question, and it just goes back to what you just said. Intentional. Like you have to have really an intention behind your actual journey with plant medicine, because the intention is one part of the puzzle when it comes to having like an either good or bad experience. Like you can go into an experience with a really good set and setting, how they kind of consider like you have to have a good mindset going into a plant medicine experience, but you also have to have like be in a good environment. Those are two components, but you also have to have like an intention going into the experience. And so if you go into the experience having the intention of, oh, I just want to have a good time, I want to see like, interesting like entities and like, have fun with like these like alternate dimensions or whatever it is, you can definitely have that. You can, see cool visuals, you can experience interesting things in the experience. And because that was your intention, that's fine. But you can also direct the experience with your intention. If your intention is, I feel like I see this as an opportunity to heal like my past trauma or better understand a subconscious belief that I have, or really better like dive into a more rigorous self-discovery process of myself, then that's entirely available to you with plant medicine. It's just a matter of how you decide to use it and what your ultimate intention is with the medicine.
Now, I would think that this could be plant medicine is an official therapeutic a tool for a lot of people, gay, straight, trans, cisgendered, you name it. What about plant medicine do you think could be particularly helpful for gay men? I mean, a certain subset of the population. Or are we all just basically the same?
No, I think I actually created a YouTube video on this recently, but the reason I think plant medicine is huge for gay men and more broadly the LGBTQ community is it connects us with something that we from a very early age we kind of lost touch with, just because we had to go through so much like of the coming out process and having to really conform to society's like norms or standards, or butt heads with people in those senses. But it's mainly around our inner child. Like plant medicines allow us a direct connection with our inner child that we may not have had the opportunity to really parent and allow it to kind of flourish while we were young, as like growing into our like 10, or when we were like around 10 to going into our early teens, I would say this is where our inner child wanted to really come out and play and explore the world. But we had a different idea of, like how we wanted to explore the world. Maybe we gravitated towards certain like interests that weren't aligned with what maybe the men are kind of, or what men are kind of attracted to at that age. And so from a very early age, we were told like, oh, you, like our moms or dads would be like, oh, you don't play with that. Like that's a girl's toy, or like stuff like that. So
Yeah.
setting those like expectations, those societal expectations up front with us, like while we kind of go and explore the world, it kind of puts a hindrance on our inner child self-expression. And so that part of ourselves is kind of muted as we kind of grow into kind of our teen years or adult years. Whereas like for heterosexuals, or for like people who are straight, they didn't really encounter all of those problems compared to us as like gay individuals growing up in our society today. And so that's one part that plant medicines can actually help us like directly connect with, is the link with our inner child and how to really heal that aspect of ourselves.
Well, follow-up question. I think most people are probably listening to or watching this video and sort of nodding their head like, yeah, totally. I like, my part of my childhood was in my development through my teen years and my sexuality, my gender identity, and was sort of robbed because society didn't know what to do with us and fed us a lot of garbage. How do you see taking psilocybin as addressing that or helping to heal that? Like, what is the mechanism that happens that you use some plant medicine and all of a sudden that damage that was done when I was 10, 11, 12 is either undone or healed in some way?
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, mushrooms, or psilocybin mushrooms, are kind of these master alchemists. They're kind of the masters uh, of really recycling what is dead or decaying on the forest floor and recycling that into new life. And so, similarly, they help us through this alchemical process while we're under the influence of of psilocybin or mushrooms. They bring up kind of what is not serving us. So they bring up all of that junk that we've kind of been holding on to. Maybe it was like, internalized shame or that type of stuff when we were kind of young, in our young adult years, or even in childhood. It kind of brings that up to the surface, allows us to feel it, deal with it, and release it. And so once we do release it, then we start really getting into the realm of better understanding and being reacquainted with our inner child. And because all of that gunk is kind of like surrounding kind of this inner child essence, like I kind of equate our inner child as our soul, like from a spiritual perspective. And so we have all of that kind of societal expectations. The ego kind of protects that little aspect of ourselves. And so what mushrooms allow us to do is it allows us to break down all of that gunk, all of that energy, and then kind of transform it into something lighter and more empowering, and allowing us to have access to that part of ourselves again.
So this is something I've noticed in myself, and at times not, but certainly prevalent in gay culture, that we do have all that gunk that you're talking about. And it's unpleasant to look at. It's unpleasant to think about. It's unpleasant to address. And so we become sort of like the rodeo clowns that sort of like, no, look over here, look over here. We're fabulous. Our parades are like the best, drag shows and colorful, and we have a rainbow flag, and and I think all of that's important and good. I don't want to take away from that. I think it's a beautiful part of our culture, but I think it can also be looking at the ugly, the unpleasant, the painful is something some of us, most of us at times maybe, have become masters at avoiding. And so you say, oh, good, take some psilocybin. You get to look at all your gunk. That's hardly a sales pitch, my friend. Maybe you could say like why it's important to look at that, and maybe you also use the word alchemy. I think maybe say what that is as well.
Yeah. I mean, the simple way to think about it is, in order to heal it, you have to feel it. And so when it comes to all of that gunk, the stuff that we don't want to look at, if we feel like that stuff is kind of holding us back from like embracing our highest potential energy, our highest potential selves, then that always will stay with us at a subconscious level. But psilocybin mushrooms, why they're considered magical in my opinion, is they allow us to break down a lot of that stuff and kind of alleviate the weight for us to actually go for maybe like what we're always really wanting to be doing, or how we want our lives to evolve as gay men. And so that kind of happened with me when I had my first experience with psilocybin mushrooms. I broke down a lot of those fears and barriers around my more mystical and spiritual self, because all of that was I kind of guarded myself with like a lot of those barriers and fears, because I grew up in Texas, like a very conservative environment. And so being a gay man, but also having spiritual and mystical interests was not really very accepted, as you can imagine, in Texas. And so I put all of those walls and barriers around that kind of inner child essence of mine. But mushrooms allowed me to just really start examining that head on and really starting to feel that and release it, like a little bit at a time. Because one mushroom journey won't, dissolve and take care of like all of that gunk at once. It's a process. But I would say like my entire journey was a transformative journey, and it required like series of different plant medicine experiences for me to finally uncover like certain, I call, puzzle pieces that allowed me to put together like a grander vision for who I am and who I could become as a gay man.
Since you brought it up, I'm wondering, because you do a lot of work with plant medicine, but you've also done a lot of work in sort of what I would call the spiritual space, clearly there's some overlap there. But why is it that you think queer people are so drawn to? Why do you think religions are so afraid of us, and why we're so drawn to the spiritual, the mystical? I have a personal theory, but I'm wondering, you see this in many cultures. Either the culture celebrates us as the shamans and the healers and the priests and whatnot, or they are terrified of us and say, please go away. We don't like you. You're a sin. There doesn't seem to be any middle ground there, though.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you bring that up too, because I feel like as gay men, we kind of did go through at least part of the alchemical process, going through our process of coming out, embracing the new gay identity, growing up, or learning how to be gay in the gay community. I think a lot of that involves the alchemical process. And just for context, the alchemical process, for anyone who doesn't know, there are 7 stages of the alchemical process. And the first stage of the alchemical process is like basically allows us. It's an event that allows us to see kind of what's the issue, what's the problem.
When you say an event, you mean like a traumatic event or something?
Yeah, it's like kind of our like first wound. It's called the calcination stage of alchemy, and it allows us to see like what is really not serving us and what we really need to focus our efforts and really work on for ourselves. And so the first wound from like my perspective as a gay man was kind of being discriminated against because like I, liked a certain guy in high school, and then someone was like, "Ew, gross," like da, 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 and like started making fun of me. And that was,
How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 35.
35.
Yeah.
And when you say, did they suspect you liked the guy, or did you come out and ask him,
No, I
or
mean, they heard through the
I want
grapevine.
details, dude.
Yeah, I mean, they heard through the grapevine essentially that I
Uh,
liked a certain guy, and so it didn't take long for word to get around, and then all of a sudden, like I was kind of outcast by certain friends, and that was like the calcination stage. That was the stage that really made me realize, like, oh damn, like I don't fit in. I don't fit into this world that I was trying to fit myself into, which is like the heterosexual straight kind of community. And so then it goes to the next stage of alchemy, which is all about, it's called the dissolution stage. It's really examining kind of what parts of myself that I really just need to let go of, that allow me to really step into the person that I really want to be. And so letting go could look like letting go to certain like expectations or what my parents had in mind for me when I was kind of going into college or whatever. So letting go of a lot of those expectations is part of the process of coming into ourselves as gay men, and then separating all of that out, and that involves like kind of the third stage of alchemy. But ultimately we get to this fourth stage, which is like we're embracing this true gay identity, which is called the I mean, like, it was like the conjunction stage, which is like integrating kind of these fragments into like a new empowered self. So like once we've kind of let go of those expectations, we kind of create like, okay, I'm a gay man in this world. How can I grow? How can I learn as a gay man in this world? And so that brings us to the fifth stage of alchemy, which is fermentation, which is all about really learning, becoming proud of being gay, and then also learning kind of the culture and kind of transforming kind of that shame we used to have when we about around being gay into pride. And what's interesting about the fifth stage of alchemy, and I guess I forgot to define what alchemy is before I like got into all of like the stages, but basically
yeah.
it's the art of transformation. It's been around for thousands of years. The ancient Egyptians first used alchemy, of the process of turning lead into gold. So it's like a physical alchemy, but we can talk about alchemy in a
So
spiritual.
you're talking not about lead into gold. You're talking about closeted me into like self-actualized, or
Exactly. Like empowered, self-actualized version of yourself. So you go from like the closeted version, which is like back like at the first stage of alchemy, all the way to the seventh stage, which is like the empowered, self-actualized version of you. So
okay.
it's kind of like that's kind of the more spiritual, um like spiritual process of alchemy. So you can look at it as like a physical alchemy, which is very valid, and then you can have like the more spiritual alchemy, which is kind of going through those seven stages. But what's really interesting about the going back to the fifth stage, the fermentation stage, is that's the stage where in physical alchemy they have what happens in fermentation is all of kind of the the gunk starts like decaying and dying from like this new material, which is like, in this case metaphorically, it's like with a new gay identity, all of that old stuff just decays and starts rotting and dying.
Mm.
And then in this process, in the physical alchemy, it releases what is called the peacock's tail. It's called putrefaction. And in this process, this colored film starts forming around this like gunk that's dying, and it's in essence it's a rainbow colored film that comes off of this process, which is really interesting because in this process, this is the exact stage that we're really embracing our gay identity and really embracing those rainbow colors, like the pride colors. And so it's kind of really poetic how we're going through this stage, and also in the process of alchemy, we're seeing kind of uh, this these various different kind of colors coming off of this kind of decaying matter, while like the gold is kind of emerging from the process.
Mm.
And then we're seeing this rainbow light. It's like just it parallels almost exactly to how we experience um like going into the gay community and kind of experiencing pride and like being surrounded with like rainbows and rainbow flags and colors. It's like really that process of seeing all of the old decay and die, while we're kind of coming into our own as gay men, and kind of leading the way with our own kind of perspective, our own insights, in the way that we can actually be proud of like our new identity.
Um, and where do you mentioned earlier that some of us started that process. We haven't quite finished it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
where do you see many of us, most of us, some of us being stuck, where you might need a little psilocybin
Yeah.
kick in the pants, a
Right.
boot in the ass?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the process going through the stages of alchemy, the hardest stages to break through are 6 and 7, because that's like the crystal. Those stages involve the crystallization, the distillation, as we call it, of the elements, of the gold matter that is kind of like emerging from that residue. There needs to be like another kind of kick, like in order to like get it from stage 5 to 6. And a lot of times, like many people may, and this is for anyone, not just gay men, but when we reach the 5th stage of alchemy, we kind of get stuck. We can't go up to like stage 6 a lot of the times. We kind of stay there, and that's like pretty common. And that's actually was common in physical alchemy too. Like a lot of alchemists would get like so close to getting the gold material, the prima materia, as they call it, but they get to like stage 5 where it's kind of emerging, but then it kind of falls back and doesn't like get all the way to materialize gold. And so that's kind of in similar ways when we're talking about spiritual alchemy, how a lot of people get stuck at like stage 5 because they're not doing the integration work to really understand what constitutes like their highest potential energy that they can really tap into, and make and better understand what purpose do they have going forward into this life.
Um, that's a lot to take in, and in a good way, but also in a way that somebody listening might be like, yeah, I like what I'm hearing, but I might need a little guidance, a little support. My head's spinning. And I suspect that's where someone like you comes in. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the work you do, how you help gay men and others move this from a theoretical nicety to finding the courage and offering the guidance to use this information.
Yeah. So I work with a lot of my clients that I've coached with in the past on really honing in on what they feel is their bread and butter, their own kind of gifts that they feel like they can bring to the table. And so usually like people that really want to better like understand their purpose, kind of step into kind of that highest potential version of themselves, they kind of have a good idea of like what they want to do and what their purpose is, but they have lots of doubts around actually like materializing that, and better understanding how they can get there. So that's where coaching is really really important to better understanding that. But then also like plant medicine, psilocybin mushrooms, like those those allies, those I call conscious beings, can really help us better understand and expand our consciousness so that we can understand what we
Yeah.
actually have the potential to do and how we can do it. And so going through maybe like a process of like a psychedelic ceremony can really help us understand what are our next steps in the process of like becoming that individual that we really want to be. And then also utilizing integration, which is distilling the psychedelic plant medicine insights that we gain from the experience and actually putting them into practical action. So that's what I work with my clients with all the time is integration work, which is integrating or making sense of your kind of psychedelic experience and how you can transform that into practical steps that could serve you moving forward.
Yeah. Just a practical aspect of the work you do. Do you do only in person? Do you do online? Do you do groups, retreats? Like what formats
Yeah.
is the work? Do you offer your work in?
Yeah, right now I'm doing one-on-one primarily, one-on-one coaching. And that's primarily allowing people to prepare for psychedelic plant medicine experiences, but also helping them integrate the lessons afterwards. So providing them this framework of how to go about, going into a psychedelic experience. So that way they come out of it or I'm sorry, they go into it feeling like safe and secure and confident in navigating the psychedelic space, but also coming out of it and knowing what type of insights they can really like pull from it and how they can really work with the energies and the insights that they gained from the experience.
And this is both online and in person?
Yeah, so primarily I do online, but I can do in person as well.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. Your videos online are just awesome.
Oh, well,
So
thank you.
I'm going to link to you on YouTube and a few other places. I know you're on Instagram. But your website, if you'd like to connect with Dr. Eric Russell from General Hospital, drericrussell.com. And I will also put links to my work. And if you'd like to get involved in the Q-MindBody community, I'm hoping to start doing maybe some online events like yoga classes, meditation groups, that type of thing, and other stuff. And I'm thinking about doing some panel conversations, bringing in, I've talked to all these great people and just pick a topic and have people talk about it from different angles. So definitely keep in touch, like, subscribe, share, and we will be looking out for your comments. So feel free to drop those on Spotify or YouTube or wherever you're seeing this video. Eric, thank you so much, and I would love to have you talk. I really want to hear about the Will and Grace archetype.
Oh, I can talk for hours about that.
I think everybody listening to this is like, yeah, there's a Grace in my life. It's definitely a Grace in my life. Maybe several.
Yeah, I have several, so it's very common.
Okay, everyone, we will see you in the next episode.